Let me tell y'all this. I'm going to break this part down to y'all. We trained for a 10-round fight. That's what we signed the contract for, everything else. So when we was in the locker room right before it was time to come out, the state people came in and they like, we made a mistake. Y'all need to fight 12 rounds. So I don't know whether it was because that girl knocked that girl out or the car was moving too fast or something. So they said, y'all got to go 12 rounds. So they made us initial the contract. Of course, I didn't want to go 12 because I knew Floyd only did 10, only trained for 10 rounds of sparring. And this is Vegas. Anybody know Vegas air? So, but Floyd wanted to give the fans a show. He said he wanted to go in there. The fans came. So we signed off for it. And he went in there and did his thing. And the last 2 rounds, I knew he was fatigued. I knew that would happen, but he's a warrior.
Ladies and gentlemen, members of the jury, members of the Roll the Tape film crew. Those were the words of Kid Austin's dad, Floyd Schofield Sr. And he said a lot of different things that may have went over the average boxing fan's head. But me, when I heard it, with my experience in this business, I realized that there's some issues that need to be addressed with regards to what Mr. Floyd Schofield said. First and foremost, please subscribe to the channel. If you haven't done so already, I encourage you. Please like this video. You're going to learn at least one thing about the business of boxing that you did not know before you encountered this channel, not just now, but also moving forward. Now, enough with the hugs, handshakes, and Valentine's Day cards. Floyd Schofield Sr., the father of Kid Austin, y'all heard him, right? He said that we trained for a 10-round fight. That's what he said. He said Kid Austin trained for a 10-round fight. That was the fight that just took place in Vegas on Saturday night, this past weekend. They trained for a 10-round fight. They signed the contract before the fight even occurred. Throughout the duration of the promotion, they already had signed a contract to compete for 10 rounds. But the state, meaning the commission representatives, the inspectors of the Nevada State Athletic Commission, came to Kid Austin's dressing room a few moments before Kid Austin was scheduled to go out and compete in a 10-round fight, initially 10-round fight. And the inspectors told Kid Austin and his dad that they made a mistake. And you heard Floyd Schofield Sr. say he don't know whether or not if it was because the fight that was previous to Floyd Schofield's fight ended prematurely because there was an unexpected knockout that took place with the female unification bout. He don't know if that's the reason why the inspectors came to the dressing room to inform them that they made a mistake. And now the fight is not going to be a 10-round fight. It's going to be newly rescheduled now to a 12-round fight. And we need you to sign these documents to agree to these terms. That's what Floyd Schofield Sr. just said. That they trained for 10 rounds because they signed the contract to compete for 10 rounds. But the inspectors came in. You see where I'm going with this? Y'all don't? Okay, good. I'm glad you don't, because that's why you're about to learn something. I'm a little bit confused because I remember 2 weeks ago, I'm talking about me personally, 2 weeks ago, I went on BoxRec because I was looking to see who the opponent was for Floyd Schofield. And the reason why I went on there 2 weeks ago is because I published a video a week prior than that, a couple of weeks ago, where Floyd Schofield was the same one that said that his son was going to knock out Tank Davis within 4 rounds if they ever fought in the ring. And I wanted to see who his next opponent was. And long and behold, guess what I saw? I saw and noticed that this was going to be Kid Austin's first scheduled 12-round bout that he would compete in. This was 3 weeks ago. It was on BoxRec that it was going to be scheduled as a 12-round fight. So the promoter, Golden Boy Promotions, already had the fight approved by the Nevada State Athletic Commission nearly a month ago. The commission obviously approved it. I just taught y'all this process last week on Friday. They approved it and then disseminated the information to the ABC. And then the ABC disseminated the information to BoxRec. And then BoxRec disseminated the information to the public. So I'm confused. I'm confused because a month ago, I saw it on BoxRec that Kid Austin was going to compete in the fight that he fought Saturday night for 12 rounds. But yet, the father said they signed the contract to compete for 10 rounds. And of course, they trained for 10 rounds because they knew they were going to compete for 10 rounds. And he also said that because his son wanted to please the fans and he still wanted to go out there and compete, they signed documentation acknowledging that they agreed to the terms of not fighting for 10 rounds anymore, which was supposed to be pre-scheduled. Now they changed their mind and they agree with the commission that they'll fight for 12 rounds. And Floyd Schofield Sr. thinks it's because the fight that was previous to their fight ended too prematurely, unexpectedly. I have a question on that. Now, you know I know the business of boxing. So now I got to educate Mr. Floyd Sr. I got a question for him first, though. You mean to tell me that you agreed to that? I'm just asking a question. Because these fathers of these fighters, they do way more talking to the public, way more interviews than the son, more publicity, all out in the videos, dancing. But behind the scenes, they don't know the business of boxing. And Floyd Schofield Sr. is no exception to the rule of me holding fathers accountable to not know the business. There's nothing wrong with talking and wanting to promote your son and blah, blah, blah. That's cool. But at some point as a father, you have to learn how to protect the interests of your son. And time again, we see that don't happen. So you agreed with that? Question number 2. Who is Kid Schofield's representation? Kid Austin, I'm talking about. Do he have a boxing manager? Who is his representation? I'm not talking about Golden Boy Promotions, the promoter. I know he's promoted by Golden Boy Promotions. I'm talking about his representation that negotiate on his behalf for his best interests as a young up-and-coming world champion. Who is his manager? I'm just asking a question, that's all. Now I'm going to tell you why I'm asking that question, because it leads to question number 3. Floyd Sr., you mean to tell me you allowed your son to go out there and compete for 2 additional rounds and not get paid for it? Because listen, let's put this in proper context. If your job, you, the average boxing fan that's listening to this video right now, take a look at it this way and put yourself in these shoes so you can understand where I'm going with this. You mean to tell me, as an average boxing fan, let's say you work a day job, right? You go to work. You're scheduled to work for 8 hours that day. Your supervisor come to you and say, listen, we're going to need you to stay 2 more additional hours, which is equivalent to 2 more rounds in boxing, right? And not only that, but we want you to sign this agreeing to the fact that you are going to stay 2 additional hours of overtime. Even though this was unexpected, even though we didn't calculate any of these unforeseen circumstances before you came to work today. Do you agree? As an average worker, you can only give 2 answers. You have a choice. You do have a choice. It's either yes or no. If you say no, cool. You do your 8 and you skate. You do your 8 hours and then you go home. But if you say yes, if you agree to working 2 additional hours of overtime at your job, when the supervisor come and inform you that they need you to stay 2 additional hours, if you say yes and agree, guess what you're going to say yes to? You're going to say yes to overtime pay. That's what you're going to say yes to. If you say yes that you're going to stay for 2 additional hours, you're going to expect to get fully compensated for the 2 additional hours that you work. See how you understand that, right? You understand that logic. It's very simple. Now let's apply that to this situation right here in boxing. Floyd Schofield Sr. is basically saying that his son agreed to those terms. Remember, the promoter didn't come to him and say, hey, we made a mistake. We made you sign a contract stating that you're going to fight for 10 rounds. But we're going to come to you and say, we're going to need you to fight for 12. No, the promoter didn't come to him and say that. The inspector who represents the commission of the Nevada State Athletic Commission came to Floyd Schofield Sr. and his son Jr., Kid Austin, and said, the commission, we made a mistake. You're not going to be fighting for 10 rounds. Now you're going to fight for 12 rounds. You agree? Okay, great. You do agree? Sign this paper right here. Because the promoter didn't make the mistake. Hear me and hear me good. I'm going to teach you something. Because the promoter didn't make the mistake, according to Floyd Schofield. That means that if the young man, Kid Austin, agreed to fight 2 additional rounds, then he should get paid by the promoter 2 additional rounds. But I'm here to tell you that the check was already written out by the promoter before Kid Austin even got to the arena. You see where I'm going with this? In other words, if the commission come to you and say, Father, we need your son to compete for 2 additional rounds. Well, you were supposed to get compensation first before agreeing to those terms, because Kid Austin agreed to do what? Overtime. Now, I know somebody's going to say, Manager Marty, why are you comparing this to overtime to an average American citizen? You want to know why? Because boxers typically get paid based on the amount of rounds that they compete in. Let me give you an example on a very small scale. If a fighter competes for 4 rounds and a promoter agrees to pay this fighter $1,000, let's do the math, it's basic arithmetic. The fighter, on average, will get paid $250 per round. Right? Not per round that they compete in, because the fight can end early. But they're still going to get paid for 4 rounds. Win, lose, or draw. Right? Okay, then. So in this scenario, it's no different. Now, why am I saying this? I'm going to break it down to its lowest common denominator. Watch this. When the commission approved bouts, this is all over the country of the United States of America. When the commission approved the bouts that the promoter present to the commission to approve. The promoter has to provide the commission with the bout agreement. And guess what's on the bout agreement? The number of rounds that the fighters, both fighters, will compete in, and the compensation. How much the fighters, each fighter, will be getting paid. Why? Because the commission is responsible to provide the compensation on behalf of the promoter to the fighter when they finish competing inside the ring. So in other words is, if I saw this 3 weeks to 1 month ago on BoxRec that this fight was scheduled for 12 rounds, there was no mistake made. They were scheduled for 12 rounds. Believe that. Kid Austin was already scheduled for 12 rounds on BoxRec a month ago. So if that's the case, that there was an error, and the Schofields believe that they were scheduled to fight for 10 rounds and they signed the contract for 10 rounds, that means that they are owed money. That means that Kid Austin was robbed because he competed in 12 rounds, right? But only got compensated for 10. You see, this is why I keep telling you all, good representation in this business is priceless. Now, either Floyd Schofield Sr. dropped the ball and thought they were supposed to be fighting for 10 rounds, and they was actually pre-scheduled to fight for 12 rounds, meaning that the bout for 12 rounds was approved by the promoter and the commission, or Golden Boy Promotions owed Kid Austin some money because he did work overtime. Well, I guess that was the excuse of why, according to his dad, Kid Austin was fatigued in the later rounds because they only prepared the fight for 10 rounds and not 12. Even though you can ask any average boxer or average boxing trainer professionally, do they actually train for the amount of rounds they're actually going to compete in? Because I've been around a lot of gyms in my history in boxing as a professional boxing manager. But I was an amateur too, and I realized that typically trainers don't allow their fighters to train just for the amount of rounds that they're going to compete in. They usually have them train additional rounds so that they won't have to be concerned about fatigue. You know, it's a form of conditioning. In other words, is if there's a professional fighter who's a 4-round fighter, right? 4-round fighter. That fighter is typically going to train between 6 to 8 rounds, right? In sparring, etc. Right? But anyway, who am I? I'm nobody important in boxing. I'm just a YouTuber. You know that's not true. But what I'm trying to get at is Floyd Schofield got to understand the business if he's going to do all this talking for his son and more than his son, the fighter. The same thing I say to all the other fathers. Shh, be quiet. Go in the background and learn the business. Then you come out and do all this talking. And while you in the background learning the business, to protect your son's interests, you let him, the fighter, get the shine and do most of the videos and do most of the interviews. That's all I'm recommending. Because this right here, either two of those things happen. But you know what? I'm doing way too much talking. Don't take my word for it. Roll the tape.